This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, Evan Jansen. The show is always live. It's broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube, but the entire show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Today we look at the looming strike in the gold sector and the threat it poses to the South African economy. Religion and money, increasingly intertwined here on the African continent. We'll then also talk about the building collapse findings in Nigeria yesterday. Later, there's a unique cancer app that's helping many sufferers. And we close with a look at Black Child, It's Possible. There's also a poem, and we close with some music. But first, here is the day's news. Taxis are back on the road in Mamelodi, Pretoria today after a stay-away left thousands stranded. Taxi services were halted in retaliation after police impounded 50 taxis during Operation Fiela. An agreement between government and Mamelodi taxi operators regarding the release of more than 50 impounded taxis is still being negotiated. Gauteng Premier David Makura is expected to meet with taxi associations today to discuss transport issues in Mamelodi. The few days of violence in Mamelodi left 4 people injured and many Autopax buses damaged. Acting Eskom CEO and chairperson of the BRICS Business Council, Brian Molefe, says the power utility is seeking funding from the newly launched BRICS Development Bank. Molefe briefed the media on the outcome of the meeting between heads of state and members of the council at the 7th BRICS Summit in Russia. Last month, energy regulator NERSA rejected Eskom's request for a 25% electricity tariff hike. Deputy Cooperative Governance Minister Obed Bapela wants to charge those responsible for the deaths of initiates with murder. Bapela was speaking in Libode in the Eastern Cape after visiting illegal initiation schools and hospitals where those who've been injured were sent. Although hundreds of initiation schools have been closed so far, more than 20 boys have died during this year's initiation season. 12 migrants died yesterday when their overcrowded rubber dinghy sank off the coast of Libya. An Italian Coast Guard spokesperson reported that the corpses of the victims were found in the sea by Coast Guard ship Datilo, about 65 kilometers off the north coast of Libya. The Coast Guard managed to save 106 migrants from the dinghy that was half immersed in water by the time they arrived at the scene. Meanwhile, about 500 people have been rescued in the Mediterranean migrant crisis in recent weeks. The Greek government has submitted new proposals to secure a third bailout from its international creditors. The head of the Eurozone group of finance ministers, Jeroen Dijsselbloem, says the plans will now be assessed in detail. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras spent the day with his cabinet drafting a last-ditch package of tax rises, pension reforms and economic liberalisation measures to ensure Greece stays in the Eurozone. Greece has asked for a $59 billion loan. And in tennis, Serena Williams is back in the Wimbledon final and right on track for a calendar year Grand Slam. The top-seeded American beat Maria Sharapova 6-2 and 6-4 yesterday in the semi-finals on centre court, putting the 5-time champion in the final at the All England Club for the 8th time. Williams has already won the Australian and the French Open this year, and another win on Saturday would give her 4 Grand Slam wins in a row, a streak that includes last year's US Open. Now, a strike is looming in the gold sector following the Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union, AMCU, their abrupt walkout from wage talks this week. The union has since declared a dispute for the lack of progress in the negotiations. 3 other unions, the National Union of Mine Workers, Solidarity and the United Association of South Africa, UASA, remain committed to the collective negotiations with Anglo Gold Ashanti, Sibanye Harmony and 2 smaller producers. AMCU is demanding a basic salary of 12,500 Rand for entry-level workers, The union waged a 5-month-long strike in the platinum sector in their push for a better deal last year. Wage negotiations between the chamber and the 3 other unions will resume Wednesday next week. Now, in the studio today, we are joined by analyst and portfolio manager at BP Bernstein Limited, Mr. Makwe Masilela. A very good morning to you, Mr. Masilela. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Let's start with your reaction to the latest developments this week and how you see the whole process now proceeding until next Wednesday.
I guess it's not surprising. I mean, the scene has already been set for very long and difficult talks. Why we've seen AMCU, they started by having issues with their membership numbers, claiming that whatever has been reflected is not a clear reflection. Even after an independent audit, they still continued and said we still need another meeting with the chamber. And I mean, it's not even rocket science. I mean, the employers offering almost 13%, the guys are asking 80%, AMCU is asking for almost 100%. So it's clear cut that definitely there should be a strike is definitely looming in the sector.
Are we going to see a crippling strike like the one we had in the platinum sector last year that went on for 5 months and brought the economy to its knees?
You know, for the fact that the platinum strike is still fresh in our minds, chances are people will start thinking that, oh, probably we'll have the very same thing. But, you know, sometimes sanity gets to prevail. I mean, it happened with the public sector negotiations. We thought that, my goodness, there's a looming strike. But fortunately, sanity prevailed. So hopefully this time around, maybe sanity will prevail. But given the offers from each side, chances are this is still going to be another long one. And unfortunately, if that happens, what is going to be a month or whatever is going to have a negative effect on our economy.
You talk about sanity. I want to ask you, is there sanity amongst our union bosses right now for the huge amounts that they're asking? It's not sustainable in any economy, least the South African economy.
That's one side, which is true. But, you know, it depends when are you addressing this. Given that the mining companies are struggling, one from low commodity prices, secondly also the electricity issue. Yes, one will think the mining companies have an issue and see the unions as being unreasonable. But now the flip side is when everything was okay, the gold trading at almost 1,006, electricity prices at low levels, what is it that the mining companies have done? And yes, if the mining companies open their books now, they'll prove a case that definitely we are not going to be sustainable if we offer you guys this percentage that we're asking for. Chances are we'll have to resort to job cuts. But I'm saying now, the situation now favors the mining companies. And the unfortunate thing with us, unfortunately, if you check our Gini coefficient, you know, that inequality is just so huge. And unfortunately, people try to use salary or wage increases as a way to try to close that gap. So we have to find a mechanism to try to close that gap because definitely it's not sustainable.
Profit sharing is definitely the one thing, and some of the mining houses are putting some terms of profit sharing in the deals, but those were rejected.
I think another question will be, when did they know about profit sharing all along? Why are you raising it now? Why didn't you raise this thing all along? Because profit sharing has been happening when it comes to senior staff members. Share options have been there ever since for CEOs and executives. So why are you bringing that to the table now? Why didn't you bring that all along? So I'm saying it's a good fact. The question might be the timing.
Surely there's never a wrong time for these kinds of benefits to be brought to the table. I want to go back to our union bosses, and I want to talk about the levels of responsibility that union bosses need to take with creating expectations amongst people that are often quite desperate.
True. And at some point, we know that unions, as we're talking now, unfortunately in the mining sector generally, you know, coming from platinum to gold, you've got two different unions trying to fight for membership. So AMCU will do whatever they can to give members hope. Same thing will happen with NUM. Yes, the timing might not be right for them to be using poor members to be able to get the necessary membership numbers, because more members, more money for them and more influence. But also at the very same time, you know, as an employer, you also have to consider that if you have happy employees, then that will also increase productivity. And surely we want profit sharing. Surely we want to see, employers or employees starting talk as the industry itself, not us and them. Try to find a way that both employers and employees, they can work together and make sure that the industry continues to be sustainable. And remember that the gold sector, we used to be one of the world's largest producers in the world. So today we are ranked far below like 4 or so in the world. So something needs to happen to keep the industry going.
Now, we saw last year with the same kind of tactics, call it that, being used by especially AMCU in the platinum sector.
Yes.
A year later, what we can report is that the people that suffered were the workers.
Sure.
The people, the job cuts were the workers. Massive retrenchments we've seen over the last time.
Sure.
How do you avoid that?
You know, the only way to be able to get to that is that we know that as workers, the only tool they have or bargaining tool is to be able to embark on strike. As an employer, I know my hugest cost is salaries. So if times are not okay, if I'm struggling as a company, what will I do? I'll try to reduce my cost. And where do I start doing that? By cutting the number of workers that I have. So, but unfortunately, the two parties, they still see each other as us and them. So they have to find a way to start seeing themselves as an industry, and how do they work towards that. And unfortunately, even people who are not part of the industry will get to suffer. Look what happened with the platinum strike. It's affecting me and you, even though we're not even part of that. But as we're talking now, yes, the odds are against the workers, which is true.
Is this explained to the workers by union bosses? Do the workers understand the question of sustainability? If things don't become sustainable anymore, if a business is not sustainable, it's not only in the mining industry, it's everywhere in the world. If it's not sustainable, cuts have to be made, and those that suffer the worst are the workers first. So when you put demands on the table, when you start a negotiation process, there has to be a level of realism.
By all means, but unfortunately now you are talking economics of the stomach. I'm working, I'm earning 2 rents, it's not sustainable. I cannot make odds means come month end. What do I want? I want my 2 rents to go to 3 rents. But now, having said that, the question is the mining company able to afford that now? The question is currently not, but now 5 years back, were they able to afford that? Yes. Did they give it to me? No. So where's the balance?
I don't understand this economics of the stomach that you're talking about, because I have 2 rand now. I could have 2 rand 20 or 2 rand 30 tomorrow if I negotiate properly. I could have nothing in 3 weeks' time if I go down this route.
Yeah, but who said you'll have nothing? Because
we see job losses, we see retrenchments.
Yeah, but the question will be, are those job losses really, really justified? Because now we have to dig back into your books. When you are saying, I cannot afford you guys, is that true? Or are you worried about shareholders?
In the gold sector, for instance, 21.4 billion on top of the current wage bill. There is no industry in the world that can afford that and sustain itself.
I think that's wrong to say that. I'll tell you why. You know, as an executive or a mining boss, my biggest responsibility is to my shareholders. And as a shareholder, I've put money into the business. My only interest
That's an argument. That's an old argument.
No, it's not. It's a fact. If I put money in a mining industry, what do I expect to get? I expect a return.
You mentioned the drop in commodity prices. Yes. You mentioned the industry under pressure. You mentioned the slide of it. Right now, in the mining industry, sustainability is the most important scenario.
But the question is this a cycle or is this forever? Are the prices going to be 1,100 forever? There was a time, it's not long ago, they were 1,006. What is it that the mining companies did there? Because that's a very crucial question.
This is what we talk about realistic negotiation, where the realistic negotiation process, where realistic promises are also made to the workers.
Yes, but the question is, this is just a drop in the prices. Why are the prices down? It's because of the global economy. Do you expect the global economy to be at least at this level forever? No. Why? Because the G20 and other countries are making initiatives to make sure that they get out of the woods. Say they get it right, then they get out of the woods. 6 months or 7 months down the line, commodity prices go up. What do you do then?
Well, that's part of the negotiation process then, isn't it?
And
but we can't cut off our noses to spite our faces by being unrealistic and unsustainable.
But who said a mining company cannot afford 21%? Because you have to dig down into their books. Who said they cannot afford that?
It's not for me to decide. That's what the accountants do. But we've run out of time.
Okay.
We can't continue. I thank you for joining us. That was a very interesting conversation, Mr. Mahwe Masilela, who's an analyst and portfolio manager at BP Bernstein. We're talking about the mining industry in South Africa. Gold sector strikes looming. Massive increases wanted by workers. Peril is what the newspapers are reporting here in South Africa. But we move on a little bit north on the continent. The ruling of the Nigerian coroner on the collapse of a guest house owned by Nigerian preacher T.B. Joshua has been met with differing views by the families of some of the victims of the disaster. Let's take a look now what some of you have been saying on Twitter. Gary George says, we shouldn't be surprised. T.B. Joshua, just another false prophet, cashing in big time on the word of God. The real Satanists in the world, says Gary George. So, the devil trying to take the light of the world away. I just know God has a plan, T.B. Joshua. I Am Tok says, no matter how fast a lie runs, the truth will someday overtake it. Yes, they say a lie can go around the world twice in a blink of an eye. William Mabuela says, so sad to hear South African Balichwene defending T.B. Joshua collapse debacle with passion, where South Africans lost their lives. The Church of Nigerian Evangelist T.B. Joshua has rejected a coroner's call for it to be prosecuted over the collapse of a building. That one from Kaelihle Kumalo. Yes, yesterday the coroner inquest. There we go. The coroner inquest set up by the Lagos State released a damning report that indicted the Synagogue Church of All Nations for negligence in the building collapse of September last year. Now, 114 people died in the collapse, 81 of them being South African citizens. Nigerian journalist Solomon Izang Ashoms is with me today. He's here. He's wearing very colorful pants. He recently wrote an opinion piece on the mix of changing beliefs and religion in our modern world. In his article, he talked about the rise of the name it and claim it theology that is spreading so fast across the African continent, where we expect God to make us rich, which he believes is creating a new brand of selfish Christians, prophets and pastors. Solomon explains that through this concept, it is no surprise that the traditional concept of church is becoming increasingly irrelevant. Good morning to you, Solomon. I really enjoyed the article that you wrote, I have to admit.
Thank you very much. You're one of the few.
Maybe I should read more mainstream stuff. But anyhow, let's get serious now. You saw the coroner's report in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Yesterday, you see the church rejected out of hand, as one would expect. What's your reaction to that, firstly?
I think it is very unfortunate. The coroner has been working on this for a couple of months to be able to put together the reason why hundreds of people lost their lives, at T.B. Joshua's church, that is the Synagogue Church of All Nations. A lot of opportunities was given to the church to come over and present his case. Even T.B. Joshua himself was asked to appear before the coroner, and he refused. His lawyer was there saying there's no need for him to appear. There was a whole conspiracy of the building, went down because there's sabotage and all those kind of reasons. Remember, this coroner, this investigation was set up by the government.
Yeah, Lagos State.
Lagos State government.
Yeah.
So everything was done appropriately. The right people, were spoken to, people who were involved in it. And this was the conclusion that was given out. And it's so sad to hear what the church has to say about it. I'm really sad and to hear that we're not taking responsibility. For me, it's all about taking responsibility. And the Synagogue Church of All Nations is refusing to do that.
Once you take responsibility, everyone can move on and you can put it to bed, as it were. But in this article you wrote, you talk about the uncomfortable mix between money and religion and the pastors that have enriched themselves so greatly. How do you then view the Synagogue Church of All Nations Is this the kind of church you talk about in the article? And is T.B. Joshua the kind of preacher that you refer to, that is making headway across the continent?
Yes, T.B. Joshua is a perfect example of that. There are a lot of other prophets, false prophets and false teachers. For me, T.B. Joshua is a false prophet. He is not legit. That's just the whole thing. And we had a lot of South Africans leaving the shore of South Africa into Lagos, Nigeria. Not a lot of them went there to be healed from cancer or HIV or all sort of ailments. A lot of them went there because there's this whole movement again about the prosperity gospel, which is damaging the church, which is more like, you give this amount of money, sow a seed. And seed, obviously, for them is money. But the Bible, when the Bible says a seed, it doesn't just mean money. It's about doing something good for somebody also.
Yes.
You know, giving your skills for a good cause. Nelson Mandela Day, you know, doing something. And they went there thinking, you know, the prophet is going to pray for them and they're going to be able to, their business is going to prosper, they're going to make money, they're going to get promotion at school, at their workplaces. And it's so sad because you go in there and you giving a lot of money. Some people went to their bank account and took a whole lot of money. And we've seen that spreading across the continent of Africa. And Nigeria as a nation is a huge culprit of that. Ghana, Kenya, and is coming into South Africa so much. That is not the true gospel.
I want to ask you why. Why is it that this type of gospel then has so much traction on the continent and is now finding such a strong foothold in South Africa?
You see, this gospel in itself came from the U.S. You know, a lot of those prosperity pastors and teachers and prophets that we have, a lot of them, you know, is something we imported from the U.S. We want to live like them. We want to drive a good car. We want to live in this big house. We want to get a private jet. And it came into Africa. And Africa, obviously, a lot of Africa is impoverished, you know, and people are struggling. We don't have almost the middle class. We don't have a middle class in Africa. We have the a huge percentage of people in the lower class and a few upper class. So people are trying to move up, you know, the ladder and be able to prosper. So the church and a lot of the false prophets are now taking advantage of such people. So people are very gullible. They believe they do it and they get disappointed after a couple of years that really is not really happening because it's not magic. The Bible doesn't give you magic to say, look, give this and then you get that. That's not the point. There are values and there are principles that you have to follow. And it is important for us to really look at that because if we don't do that, then South Africa is definitely going to be at risk. And a lot of people are going to be, you know, disappointed in God, disappointed in the church. So we have to protect the church. But unfortunately, we have pastors and prophets who are not really of God that are damaging the reputation of the church.
The principles of ethics always guides what we do, whether you are religious or spiritual. Ethics stands above all of it. I want to ask you what needs to happen at a governmental level, because I've seen in countries like Cameroon, T.B. Joshua and so forth, East Church, they've cracked down on them and said, no, you're not allowed here because you're selling snake oil to desperate people. What should we be doing in South Africa? And what should we be doing in the wider continent to come to terms with this?
I think we have to regulate it in as much as the church is a spiritual entity. But at the same time, I feel the government has a responsibility to make people aware. And to also, the people also need to be able, if you're a Christian, you need to read your Bible really well. It seems like a lot of people don't read their Bible. But how do we set up, how do we make sure that you know, the church is being monitored? How do we make sure that the church is not allowed to say certain things from the pulpit? We're not trying to stop the church from really saying what is biblically correct. But if you go out and say what is not biblically correct, how do we make sure that we make sure that the church doesn't take advantage of people? We see people giving their cars, taking their salary for the month of January, giving. How do we make sure we don't really do that? How do we make sure that the government follows some of these false prophets and really investigate them and follow them really closely? Because if you don't do that, they're going to use the scripture for their own gain, you know, to drive a big car. You see the way pastors are living and prophets are living right now. It's really shameful for me because they will claim that Jesus lived a good life and all that. But Jesus was not really, he wasn't an upper class guy. He related with people that are really down there. But what does the government have to do? What does the community need to do? If there is any false prophet in the community, we really need to talk about it. And we need to talk about, stuff like TB Joshua's also.
Yeah, we need to call it out. I suppose we all have responsibility. We all should take responsibility that this kind of thing don't happen in our society. Solomon, I thank you for joining us. Very interesting conversation we've had this morning. I really enjoyed the article that you wrote. I thought it was a sober view on what is happening on the continent, and sometimes sober views are not always seen for what they are. Thank you. That, of course, Nigerian journalist Solomon Izanga Shoms. Now, let's take a look at the pick of the day. Some good news for South Africa. This pick comes from South African heroes. Pretoria speedster Akani Simbine has equaled the South African men's record of 9.97 seconds at the World Student Games in South Korea. Fantastic achievement. I really think that we are going to make quite a splash at the Olympics. Hopefully we'll win a gold medal in the 4x100 meters because we've got so many talented young sprinters coming up through the ranks. Let's now move on and take a look at the front pages from around the globe. In Europe, The Times reports that thousands of British tourists are being evacuated from Tunisia after the Foreign Office warned that another terrorist attack was highly likely. We move to the UK, The Independent there. Greece's government submitted its reform proposals to its European creditors last night in a final bid to secure bailout funding and avoid crashing out of the single currency. Finally, New York. The International New York Times reports July 1995, Europe's worst mass killing since World War II was carried out in Srebrenica, leaving an approximately 8,000 Muslim men and boys dead. 20 years later, some families have yet to lay their loved ones to rest. Now for a look at what's happening around South Africa today. We start here in Johannesburg, where the trial of 4 men accused of killing Mozambicans Emmanuel Sithole is expected to continue in the Magistrates Court in Mafeking. He's facing 3 counts of rape for allegedly raping 3 younger members of his family. The man was apprehended by the community who will be protesting outside the court today. Time for us to take a break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
No worries, that sounds good. How long have I got? 5 minutes?
No. Welcome back. Traditionally, cancer patients are not given a real role in their own healing. Research shows that being or feeling empowered in an otherwise draining situation has beneficial effects on your immune system. Cancer survivor and international award-winning creative director Con Burtish is in the process of creating the Cancer Dojo, a mobile app that will provide tools and content to empower people affected by cancer. Since beating cancer in 2013, Burtish had been urged by health professionals to share his way of dojo thinking. Now, joining us from Cape Town is creative director and the inventor of the app, Con Burtish himself. Very good morning to you, Con. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Eben. Thanks for having me. Geez, you've done such a good job. I feel like you've said it all for me already. Amazing.
Fantastic, mate. Then just go back to yourself a little bit. Why did you feel the need to go beyond the conventional methods of treatment?
So I think one of the scariest things for me was I had to sign this form before I went in for brain surgery to remove the tumor from my head, from the back of my brain. And I had to sign this form, and the form said, look, we're doing brain surgery, so you might lose some senses. We might be successful, but you'll lose some senses. And I couldn't stand that. I thought, well, what kind of senses? And they said, well, your speech, your hearing. I thought, oh, that's pretty heavy. So I thought, okay, I'm going to prepare my mind. And I started to prepare my head to be flexible and agile. And that became a diet that I created throughout my journey through cancer, is giving myself a role and tapping into a science called psychoneuroimmunology, which is how your mind affects how your body behaves. And so by giving myself a role in my own healing, I was able to boost my immune system. And obviously, cancer goes on for many years, and it's a very debilitating disease. So the more you can strengthen your immune system and work on your resilience, the more positive the outcome will be. So one of the things I realized as a creative thinker, I realized a lot of other people aren't. My 15 years in advertising has showed me many people are not essentially creative thinkers. Nothing in their world demands that they be creative. So a lot of people couldn't engage with their own healing because they couldn't actually see what was going on or how they could play this role. So what I'm building with this app, Cancer Dojo, is how I can empower people facing disease with very simple tools and techniques that are visual and tap into all of these different neuropsychology of how we can boost our own immune system and play a role, augmenting the treatments like chemotherapy, radiation, multiple surgeries, etc.
Now, you're busy with a campaign for the Cancer Dojo. How's that going, and what's the reaction been like to what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a good question, Evan. I've been very surprised by the amazing support that I've received from the medical fraternity, which is really interesting, as well as creative people. And I think there is a great intersection between creativity, health, and technology, and how we can start making medicine and the medical approach something that is far more user-friendly and human, so that people can engage with it and tap into all of these different insights into how our bodies behave, our minds and bodies are connected. And the Cancer Dojo app, I'm crowdfunding at the moment. I've just won one of the Vodacom Change the World program grants, which is great. So I'm having great highs. So that's a good one going forward. I'm still getting more funding to bring this thing to life. I'm working on the wireframing at the moment, actually. So yeah, we're going full bore ahead. We still need all the help we can get, but it's a wild ride. You should check us out.
And what's the meaning behind Dojo, and where can people get the app?
Cool. So a dojo is a traditional place, martial arts, meditation arts, a structure. Think the Matrix. Remember Neo in the Matrix, in the dojo? It's a place where you exercise. A lot of guys do like karate and stuff, but it's a place where you have to do exercise that links your mind to your body. It's very much about understanding yourself, what you're going through, and how you can play a role in your own healing. And a dojo is a representation of a place that enables you to do that, your own space, which you're provided with tools that you can use to boost your own immune system.
Well, Con, thank you for joining us. You're doing a fantastic job, and all the best with the fundraising there. That's Con Burtish, a man who, he runs he's developed an app to help cancer patients called Cancer Dojo. You should have a look at it, and maybe if you have a few rand on the side, help him because it can help so many people. Let's quickly take a look now. The Congress of South African Trade Unions is adamant that its special Congress, scheduled to take place next week, will go on without disruption. Here are some of the views of those who think maybe it won't. Spink says, be consistent. It's consistent in your politics at the very least, COSATU, says the Spinks. Melt says, LOL, COSATU is gagging its members. I sometimes think politicians gave overwhelmed by cameras and just bubble. He tells nonsense says, how can the limping COSATU deny unions a platform to debate issues? Hence, they demanded special National Congress. For that matter, it's sickening indeed. Boise Mpulanyani says, I wish COSATU must now change their mindset, focusing on labour issues, not Barbie or NUMSA. Now let's take a look at what's on our Facebook page. Because Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa has denied reports of a constitutional crisis after ANC criticism on the judiciary. Mr. Ramaphosa says he looks forward to an upcoming meeting between President Jacob Zuma and Chief Justice Mogoeng. Then, Guinean authorities have indicted former military leader Musa Dadis Camara over a massacre at the stadium in the capital in 2009, in which shoulders are accused of killing at least 157 people. His lawyer and a spokesman for his party said yesterday. And the United Nations have criticized Nepal for imposing customs procedures and taxation on aid, saying that it was delaying the delivery of life-saving materials to tens of thousands survivors of 2 recent mega earthquakes. Of course, SABC Newsroom on Facebook is what you put in the search bar. Time for us to take another short break. You'll be back with Newsroom shortly. Don't go away.
From humble beginnings, this selfless icon altered the history of the world, freed a country, and united a nation. He taught us humility and forgiveness. To the world, he is Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. But to us, he is simply Tata Madiba.
Welcome back. Now, Billy Guy Bembe is a motivational speaker, life coach, author, and television and radio host. He founded his company, Black Child It's Possible, at the age of 19, with his first employees being his university classmates. Black Child It's Possible prides itself as being a leading organization with a unique offering of inspiration through speaking and teaching. Last year, Black Child It's Possible, in partnership with the Piermont Group and Empress Palace, took on a project to build and donate a library to Mapanzela Primary School. They donated more than 10,000 books and fed learners, planted trees, and refurbished toilets in classrooms. Now today, in studio, Billy Guy Bembe, the founder of Black Child Is Possible, is with us with Piermont Group Corporate Affairs Executive, Mr. Vusi Zwane. Very good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having us.
Billy, what drove you to start all of this? It's fantastic, the work that you do.
Urban, in fact, thank you for the opportunity for having us here today. But my story begins a very long time ago, primary school days. I grew up like any other child in a township setup, and a lot of my family still being rural-based. And a lot of us speak about the word poverty a lot of the times. And, you know, poverty is either not going to bed without food, poverty is not having enough to take your kids to school. Yes. But I grew up in a setup where a lot of us actually find ourselves imprisoned by the fact that we grow up in poverty. And for me, I took a step like I do now to say, any human who wants to change their life needs to reach a point where they say enough is enough. So you grow tired of wearing a torn shirt to school. You grow tired of not having enough when you come back home. You grow tired of a family that's not really going that...
Need for change, I think.
Need for change is what
they call it.
When I went into school, I told a lot of people that I'd love to be in business at some point. And a lot of the times we meet resistance, whether with big dreams, we meet resistance with accomplishments. And I started my company, as you had introduced me, at the age of 19. I was at UJ, just next door, the SABC. And my first classmates were my employees. And that also had a lot to do with self-belief. But for me, it was trying to have a paradigm shift of young people taking themselves more seriously, but more importantly, knowing that all possibilities are possible within themselves.
Piedmont Group, Black Child It's Possible. How did this synergy come about?
Well, I met Billy about less than 2 years ago, and I like the philosophy. As a corporate Piedmont Group, I must just explain that we pride ourselves as the leading casino group in the space of socio-economic development in the country. And Billy, coming from the township himself, and with his ideals, we thought it was a perfect synergy to take back the message to the township, because sometimes when you come in as a corporate, you do need a champion from the local community that people can identify with, especially the young ones, and this is a perfect synergy.
Billy Guy, it is. Billy Guy.
It's actually my real and full name.
Your real and full name. Now, Billy Guy, in all the stuff that you do, what is the thing that you love the most?
Most I love is when we arrive at any place, given students, given an audience, given a community that doesn't have enough, and you find it a certain way, and when we leave, you leave people inspired. You see a glow in a young person's eye. You see hope. In fact, it's something I love speaking most about, that hope keeps us alive. But the fact that hope then gets reignited in people to achieve, to do better, and most important, to stretch themselves, that is what keeps me going every single day.
Lucy, what do you think is the most successful thing that you guys cooperated on?
The most successful, I think, is getting the message out there. We work on various community initiatives, and the biggest one, which I think I would like to talk about today, is the Mandela Initiative, where we've taken on education, as our former statesman and anti-apartheid icon used to say, that the only way a child of a farm worker can navigate themselves out of poverty to become the president is through education. So as Piedmont, we spend a lot of money. We actually spend in excess of 30 million rands a year towards the socio-economic development project. And Billy, a motivational speaker, somebody that works with communities, has been ideal, in terms of our partnership, in terms of taking that message back. So this Mandela year, we're going to be working at Welamlambo Primary School, and we, again, working through libraries to promote the culture of reading and writing in the schools. And Billy is here with us to take that message back, to the townships, to take the message back to the communities.
Reading and writing sets us free at the end.
That's correct.
It's an experience that I've made in my life even. But I want to, I always have to make it political, Billy Guy. That's my job. In South Africa, our young people are often accused of being entitled or suffering from entitlement syndrome. How do we get our young people to move away from that I must get to I must make it happen for myself?
For me, I think it starts off with an example right from the top. If, for most part, a lot of our parents coming out post-apartheid, you find that a lot of promises perhaps had been made to them, and people sit in a waiting position for things to happen on their behalf. Remember, children don't listen to what we say, they do as we do.
Yes.
So if, for example, I'm sitting in an RDP house and find that my parent is someone who had been with an open hand. And it's a very good job that the government is doing with having those. But if someone sees that as a constant thing that you need to ask, you need to have an open hand, and doesn't see a lot of examples of people actually generating things from ground up. And that's the example we're trying to leave here, to say that as a young person, it doesn't matter what circumstance, what background, you can start things in your community, you can succeed. And reading, writing, understanding is where it all starts.
Now, you're a great writer and great poet. Don't you want to recite a short little poem for us.
Black child, it's possible. I believe it's all possible. I believe everything was meant to be. 1976, almost 36 years ago, the youth of this country died for a reason. They did not die in vain. They died for us to see the possibilities that life has for each and every one of us. Black child, it's possible. Black child, you are powerful. More powerful than any force that this world has ever seen. More powerful than the pharaohs back in the times of the Egyptians. Black child, anything is possible. That car you stare at every day from a window of a taxi, I say, black child, it is possible. That house you constantly speak about on the hilltops where you keep on saying it's only e-cork or that stay there, I say dream it too, because black child, it is possible. And the position within a company, many of you keep on saying he just landed a BE deal yesterday, I say black child, it is possible for you too. Black child, you can have anything imaginable. You can have anything under God's shadow. For God said anything is possible for each and every one of us. He did not say that your color nor your race shall make you mightier or lesser than others. He said it's possible for each and every one of us. But I'm here as Billy Guy Bembe to tell you that black child, it is possible.
I believe you, man. I believe you. What a wonderful voice. What passion. You've just refreshed my Friday. I've been feeling a little bit low this morning, a little bit lack of energy after a tough week here in the seat. I look forward to my weekend. I thank you for joining us, Billy. Billy Guy.
Thank you so much.
You're the guy. Fantastic. Mr. Vusizwane, thank you for joining us as well today. You guys are doing fantastic work. That's what South Africa is about. That's what our spirit is about. Yes, we can. Of course, let's go now overseas a little bit and talk about cricket and matters of none importance. Joe Root, he plundered a superb century to defy Australia. Australia came back. They had a tough start. Let's just have a look at some of your comments on what's been going on with the Ashes series of Ashes. Watch out for Chris Rogers' first ever Test 6. That too in this age, yes. That was the talking point yesterday. Pratik says, don't know why, but the Ashes matches has been one of my favorite. Yes, quite a few of them all around the world. In the last Ashes in 2013-14, the last 5 Australia wickets averaged 214 runs. England must not let that happen today. If they do, they will lose this game, Graham. Some of the views of our viewers with regards to the Ashes, of course, it's going on. It's probably, they say, the biggest series in cricket. But today we conclude with musician Howie Combrink. Now, he's been nominated for 2 SAMA Awards this year for the Best Newcomer and Best Adult Contemporary Album. His music career, he's certainly grabbing the spotlight in the music industry with his first single, Eat It While It's Hot, topping the charts many South African radio stations, and his second single, Change, following suit. Now, he's performed at key events such as Park Live, and last year saw him perform as a supporting act for Jeremy Loops, Gangs of Ballet, Prime Circle, and the Parlotones, to name just a few. He's with us here in studio. Howie, very good morning. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Good. How's it going?
Can't complain. It's Friday. Friday's a happy day for me because I get the weekend off. But let's talk about your recipe for success. How did it all come about? You look like a very relaxed guy.
Yes, yeah. Well, it all kind of started. I've been a drummer my whole life, really, and probably about 2.5, 3 years ago, I decided to start writing my own songs and stuff that I would enjoy performing, you know. And I ended up writing quite a few songs, probably about 20, 25 tracks. And from there, I thought initially, well, I'm gonna just start playing around town, you know, in some venues and see how it goes. And it's kind of just sort of taken off from there, you know. It's been working itself, which is great.
Now, this is you. A little bit earlier, we recorded how he came in and played one of his tracks. But, you know, change, drug addiction is one of the themes within Change. Why is this important for you?
With the single Change, I released that song in affiliation with a company called RADA. And what RADA stands for is Rape, Alcohol, Drugs and Abuse. And when I wrote the song, I wanted to partner with an organization, you know, to make a difference and for the better. And when I met the founder of RADA, JP Nobrega, it was a great opportunity for me to partner with them because they had the same vision, you know, and the same passion for it as well. And I think it is something that we need to conquer. I mean, everybody in their life has got someone close to them that has gone down that road,
Yeah.
you know, and I think everybody can relate to it, whether you've been a drug addict or not.
Everyone's struggling, whether it's sugar or cocaine, we're all
That's it,
struggling.
man.
Howie,
Yeah.
it's the way it is now. You've already performed with some of the biggest names, not just in this country, elsewhere. What you planning for the future? Are you going international a little bit maybe at some point?
I think most certainly, I think it's every artist's dream to get abroad. Recently we have started talking about it more and focusing on it and sort of pulling in as many contacts and opportunities as possible. So hopefully in the new year we can get across and go and see what's out there, you know, what's for the better.
Absolutely. Well, Howie, we wish you all the best with your endeavours. Who's performing with you? I want to just tune out and turn the sound up.
That's
because
my piano player, Ricky.
Ricky, well,
He's
Ricky...
actually my drummer.
He's your drummer. Well, you
Yeah,
guys are
phenomenal
You
musicians.
do it all. Phenomenal musicians. Howie Combrick with us in studio. Let's go out. Which track is this?
This is a song called Cloudy Days.
Cloudy Days. Cloudy Days. Howie Combrick. We love it in the morning.